did not notice how emotionally exhausted I had become until my 6-year-old daughter asked me why we never do anything slowly anymore. She asked it one evening while I stood in the kitchen half listening to a podcast, answering work emails on my phone, and microwaving frozen pasta because I was too tired to cook properly again. She was sitting at the table coloring quietly when she looked up and said it so casually I almost missed it. "Why do we always hurry?" I laughed at first because children say strange things sometimes, but later that night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone on the couch staring at the dark television screen and realized I could not remember the last time our home felt peaceful. Not happy. We still had happy moments, but peaceful felt different. Everything in our life had started feeling immediate. Constant noise, constant scrolling, constant stimulation. Even my attention felt fractured into tiny pieces. I would watch movies while checking my phone, listen to music while skipping every song 30 seconds in, start hobbies and abandon them 2 days later because my brain already wanted something newer and faster. And underneath all of it was grief I had not fully acknowledged. Not dramatic grief. Nothing had died recently. Nobody had left me, but I think I was mourning the version of life I thought adulthood would feel like. I grew up in the late 90s in a small house where evenings lasted longer somehow. My mother did puzzles at the dining room table for weeks at a time. Rainstorms felt like events instead of background noise. We rented movies from this same little video store every Friday night, and my father always let me carry the tapes to the counter like I was handling something important. Back then boredom existed, and strangely, boredom made room for closeness. I did not understand that until much later. After my divorce 3 years ago, life became survival-oriented in ways I never expected. My ex-husband left quietly after months of emotional distance I kept pretending not to notice. There was no huge betrayal story. No dramatic screaming match. One day he simply admitted he had been unhappy for years and no longer knew how to reconnect with me. Sometimes I still resent him for how calm he looked while dismantling our family. Other times I resent myself because part of me already knew long before he said it out loud. The year after he moved out was chaotic. I worked constantly because I was terrified financially. My daughter spent too much time with tablets while I answered emails beside her, feeling guilty and trapped at the same time. I kept telling myself this phase was temporary. Then one day I looked around and realized our entire life had started feeling emotionally temporary. Fast meals, fast entertainment, fast distractions. Even sadness became quick because there was always another screen waiting to interrupt it. So I started trying to slow things down, not in a perfect way. Honestly, some of it probably looked ridiculous at first. The first thing I did was stop skipping songs in the car. That sounds so small, but it changed something inside me unexpectedly. I used to treat music like an impatient negotiation. 30 seconds of a song, then skip. Another song, skip again. My brain had become so uncomfortable with stillness that even mild boredom felt unbearable. One morning I forced myself to leave the radio alone during the drive to school. At first it irritated me more than I expected. A slow song came on that I normally would have skipped immediately, and I could physically feel myself reaching for the button before stopping. Then my daughter started singing softly in the back seat. Not well, just happily. I remember gripping the steering wheel while this strange sadness came over me because I realized how rarely we simply existed together without trying to optimize every second. After that, I started making tiny changes almost obsessively. I bought yarn and learned crochet from online videos even though I was terrible at it initially. My first blanket looked uneven and slightly depressed somehow. I almost quit several times because I hate being bad at things. But every evening after dinner, I sat on the couch working quietly while my daughter colored beside me. Something about using my hands calmed my nervous system in a way scrolling never did. I think part of me also liked the idea of creating something that lasted longer than digital noise. A scarf, a blanket, something imperfect but physical. One night my daughter asked if I could teach her someday. I smiled and said of course, but after she went to bed I cried unexpectedly in the bathroom because I suddenly remembered my grandmother teaching my mother how to sew when I was little. For years I thought inheritance only meant money or genetics. Lately I have started thinking inheritance is really about emotional atmosphere. The feeling people leave inside a home. That thought changed me. Not immediately. I still fail constantly. There are evenings where I sit on the couch scrolling mindlessly for 2 hours while my daughter watches cartoons beside me and guilt crawls all over me afterward. Sometimes exhaustion wins. Sometimes convenience wins. Sometimes loneliness wins too. Because slowing down can feel uncomfortable when you are avoiding things emotionally. That surprised me. The quieter our home became, the more I noticed my own sadness. I noticed how empty the house felt after my daughter went to bed. I noticed how often I still reached for my phone hoping my ex-husband would somehow become emotionally different overnight. I noticed how lonely single motherhood can feel during ordinary moments nobody talks about, especially evenings. Evenings are dangerous for loneliness. One rainy Saturday, my daughter and I spread a puzzle across the coffee table while soup simmered on the stove. The power flickered twice because of the storm outside. And for a moment the house became very dim and quiet. She looked up at me and whispered, "This feels cozy." That word nearly broke me, because suddenly I realized I had spent years trying to create efficiency instead of comfort. My marriage had been like that too toward the end. Efficient, functional, emotionally rushed. My ex-husband and I became two people constantly managing logistics instead of sharing life together. We watched shows while both scrolling separately on our phones, ate dinners distracted, filled silence with background noise because actual intimacy started feeling harder than distraction. There are moments where I still feel angry at him for leaving. Then there are moments where I understand why he felt lonely beside me because truthfully, I was lonely too. We just expressed it differently. He withdrew emotionally while I became controlling about routines and schedules. I kept trying to fix our lives structurally instead of emotionally. Part of me still feels ashamed admitting that, especially because after the divorce I told myself I was the abandoned one, the stable one, the devoted one. But stability without presence can still feel cold. That realization came slowly and painfully. I think that is part of why I became so obsessed with slowing life down afterward. Not because I wanted nostalgia exactly, but because I wanted presence back. Real presence. Not optimized parenting. Not productivity. Not perfectly curated memories. Just actual attention. So now we go to the library every Friday evening and treat DVDs like sacred little events. My daughter walks through the aisles holding movie cases against her chest while taking forever to choose. The librarian already knows us by name. The first time we watched a DVD together at home, my daughter became fascinated by the menu screen. She said, "Wait, the movie doesn't start immediately?" I laughed so hard I almost cried. And honestly, I understand how ridiculous all this sounds sometimes. There are moments where I wonder if I am romanticizing the past because the present feels emotionally overwhelming. Maybe I am. Maybe this whole slow living thing is partially grief wearing a softer outfit. But I also know something real is happening inside our home. We sit outside more now, not because every moment becomes magical. Sometimes it is boring. Sometimes mosquitoes ruin everything. Sometimes my daughter complains the entire time while I silently question why I insisted on outdoor reading hour in humid weather. But other times we sit under blankets listening to rain hit the awning while drinking hot chocolate, and something inside me settles. Those moments feel emotionally memorable in a way endless scrolling never does. A few months ago, my ex-husband came by to pick up our daughter after work. He stepped inside while she searched for her shoes upstairs and looked around the living room quietly. The puzzle was spread across the table. Yarn baskets sat beside the couch. Music played softly from an old radio I found at a thrift store. He smiled strangely and said, "The house feels different now." I knew what he meant immediately. For a second I wanted him to regret leaving me. I wanted him to see warmth here and feel excluded from it somehow. That ugly little impulse appeared before I could stop it. Then almost immediately afterward I felt embarrassed. Because healing is not clean. Growth is not noble all the time. Sometimes part of me still wants validation from the person who hurt me. Still, after he left that evening, I noticed something important. The house did feel different. Not perfect, not healed completely, but softer. My daughter spends more time drawing now. I spend less time multitasking compulsively. We eat slower. We leave music playing without controlling every second of it. Some evenings we simply sit on blankets in the backyard watching clouds move while absolutely nothing productive happens. And strangely, those are becoming my favorite moments. I used to think peace would arrive dramatically, like some huge emotional breakthrough. Now I think peace is much quieter than that. I think it looks like puzzles left unfinished for days. Like listening to entire songs without interruption. Like library movies and rainstorms and yarn slipping through tired hands while your child sits nearby feeling safe enough to be bored. Mostly, I think peace feels like finally allowing your life to happen at a human speed again.